Okay. Part 3, I think? Zet candidates. I was about to go back into the archive, resolved to leave everything in Magdalena's capable hands, when Handler timidly called out, Lady Magdalena? Yes, Lady Handler. Rather than continuing to work in the archive, perhaps we should hide or something of the like, so that we do not cross paths with Lady Detlinde? Should we not keep our working here a secret? Magdalena paused and thought, it would be safest for you to remain here, as we do not know how many guards Lady Detlinde has brought, or what she intends to do, but you are largely correct. If we stayed put, then it wouldn't matter how many guards were accompanying Detlinde, none of them would be able to enter the archive with her. They made it the safest place for us, but avoiding detection entirely was still the best outcome. An encounter on the stairs would prove most dangerous of all, Lenore said. We were all at a loss for words, but the sudden appearance of an ordonnance brought us back to our senses. It landed on Magdalena's wrist and started to deliver a message from Solange. She was speaking in a hushed voice, as if concerned about who might overhear her. This is Solange. Lady Detlinde is coming to my office to receive her library registration. If you wish to keep the young ones out of sight, hide them at the back of the closed stack archive. I will assist you in leaving through another exit later. Solange had known that we were eating lunch here in the underground archive, so she had gone to the trouble of contacting us. If she could buy us some time and help us to escape, she would be doing us a tremendous favor. And here I thought I would get to hang out in the archive all day. Curse you, Lady Detlinde! If you wish to avoid her as well, Lady Magdalena, then we could all hide together, I suggested. She shook her head. It would be strange for the archive to be open without anyone inside. Furthermore, I must find out who informed Lady Detlinde of this archive and when. She should not know of a place that not even the surviving royal family was aware of. We can also assume that it was a recent discovery for her, otherwise she would have registered while she was a student. True, if she had known about the archive before, then why wouldn't she have joined the library? Even after Professor Solange guides you outside, Magdalene continued, take care not to approach the central building. Those who have finished their lunch might still be in the halls. I will send an ordinance once Lady Detlinde leaves the library. Yeah, y'all need to shut the archive quick. I nodded, gave her my translation, then gathered my things together in preparation to leave. In the meantime, Cornelia sent ordinances to my attendants, warning them not to return to the library for the time being. I alone shall deal with Lady Detlinde, Magdalena announced with a smile. Hildebrand, do not slow the others down. She entrusted him to his guard knights, and hurried us all out of the room. We rushed upstairs. The door leading into the closed stack archive had been left unlocked for our attendants, so we didn't face any issues on that front. Cornelius was standing by the entrance to the reading room and scanning the archive for any blind spots. Prince Hildebrand, please hide over there, behind the farthest bookshelves. Those of Dunkelfelder do the same. Lady Rosemont, come to this bookshelf over here and take care not to step out from behind it. The bookshelves in the closed stack archive where so many valuable documents were kept all had solid black back panels, meaning they were perfect to hide behind. Hildebrand and Handler were at the very back of the room since they had so many retainers, while my retinue and I had been waiting behind a bookshelf close to the entrance. Are they not done yet? No matter how long we waited, Detlinde never appeared. I was grateful that Solange was buying us time, but standing completely still was starting to hurt. The door is unlocked so that her attendants can pass through. Remain quiet so they can enter at any moment. I want to read the books here. Girl, pay attention to what's going on. You don't want Detlinde to spot you, because then she'll think, what are you doing here? And then things could get out. There were so many new titles before my very eyes, and not being able to delve into them was agonizing. Oh, what if I promise to stay quiet? Can I read them? No. Figures I knew that would be the answer, but it was worth a shot. I decided to hold my tongue, well aware that my request would only annoy my retainers, and that was when the door suddenly clicked open. Bright light streamed into the closed stack archive. Oh my, and that letter was your reason for coming here? Solange asked, her soft voice filling the room. She was purposely making sure we knew why Detlinde was visiting. Indeed, I do not know who sent it, but they said that they sincerely wanted me to become the next Zent, and that this library contained information crucial to becoming the country's next ruler. It was surely a gift from the gods. Hold on a second. You came all the way here simply because an anonymous letter told you to. Isn't that ridiculously thoughtless for an Archduke candidate? I know that specifically because I'd received so many criticisms for my own thoughtless actions. Had I done what Detlinde was doing right now, Ferdinand would have given me a taste of thunder for sure. I was surprised she had received the letter to begin with, considering that all such correspondence was supposed to go through one's attendants. This is unthinkable behavior for an Archduke candidate, but I'm more surprised that she's actually found what she was seeking. Ferdinand had said that Detlinde failed to activate the magic circle because she didn't have enough mana, but if she really was serious about becoming the next Zent, she had come to the right place. The letter mentioned that the Royal Academy's library opens during the Archduke Conference, so here I am, Detlinde said. Meetings and tea parties continue to fill my schedule as we speak. Had I not seized this opportunity to come, who knows how long I might have had to wait. It was rare for someone to be so busy from the very beginning of the Archduke Conference. For the first few days, the Archducal couple of each duchy would all gather together for meetings, and only then were invitations given and plans made. One schedule would often start to quite empty, and then gradually become more packed over time. I think she's lying about that. Back when Ehrenfest had sat near the bottom of the rankings, our nobles had received so few invitations that many of them had considered going home early. That wasn't the case anymore, though. Sylvester had informed me that everyone's schedules were completely full. In other words, he won't be able to leave and then heroically appear elsewhere like he did when I was an apprentice Blue Shrine Maiden. Delaney continued, Prince Sigiswald triggered the magic circle during a Starbind ceremony. It stands to reason then that the royal family will also come to this underground archive during the conference. I simply cannot allow the prince to get ahead of me, not when I was recognized as a Zent candidate first. Oh, please, you barely activated that circle. You barely activated it. If any at all. It was like barely. Hortensia gave a conflicted smile and said in a chastising voice, such phrasing may be considered disrespectful to the royal family. In response, Detlinde giggled, a family without the Gruterstrike can hardly be considered genuine royalty. I was chosen by the gods. Blah, 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 blah. And by their will, I shall become a true Zent. I wasn't at all sure where her confidence was coming from, but her high-pitched laughter echoed throughout the close stack archive. Oh, shut up, Detlinde. I want to smack her. Someone needs to smack her. Yes, shut up. Stay quiet. But you are the next Ob Ahrensbach, are you not? For now, but I will obtain the Gruterstrike before I become Ob. Detlinde's retainers hadn't said a word this entire time. I wasn't sure why. Maybe they believed her, or maybe correcting her was such a futile effort that they were pretending not to hear her. But it was a very bad move. At this rate, she was going to be in prison for treason and Ferdinand alongside her. Hortensia cleared her throat, at last putting a stop to the piercing laughter. Lady Detlinde, if you would allow me to ask a question. Then, in a deliberately clear voice, she continued, Are Schlaftrum's flowers blossoming as beautifully as ever this year? Schlaftrum's flowers? Oh, are you not familiar with them? They can only be obtained in Ahrensbach, and my husband is rather fond of them. Do ask Lady Georgine about them when you next get the chance. With that, Hortensia led Detlinde and her retainers downstairs, and they disappeared from sight. What are Schlaftrum's flowers? Lady Detlinde doesn't know about them, but Lady Georgine does? Hortensia is married to Robot, the Sovereign Knight Commander, right? Schlaftrum was the god of darkness, with god of drains, which was probably a hint. I didn't doubt there was some kind of secret code that nobles used when they wanted to be discreet or appear not inconspicuous, or test the waters to see how much the other person knew. Maybe I should ask Ferdinand? That might not be a smart move, though. It seemed unwise to write to him immediately after being told to minimize contact with him, but this weight seemed too heavy for me to bear alone. Two very important people had suddenly been mentioned, Georgine, who was targeting Ehrenfest, and Robot, who had sent Ferdinand to Ahrensbach over suspicions of treason. Even I could tell that this was serious and potentially dangerous problem. Since this has something to do with Georgine, I'll need to discuss it with Sylvester as well, but that goes without saying. As for Robot, I wasn't sure whether Sylvester even knew about him. I had only interacted with the man when I was summoned to the Royal Academy about the Bible, and when he came to the library and revealed that Ferdinand was the seat of Adalgisa. Hopefully I can explain today's events while keeping all the Adalgisa stuff a secret. I was pulled from my thoughts by a sudden noise as Solange closed the door to the basement. She locked it, then turned around and said, Everyone, are you there? Yes, Professor Solange. There's another exit over here. She took us outside through an emergency exit. Going from the dim lighting of this close stack archive to the bright outdoors made my eyes sting. This is the back side of the library. It happens to be opposite the central building, so as long as you do not ride your high beasts, nobody should see you. So this was the library's garden. I could see tables and chairs in place, but the overgrown grass had started to swallow them. I could guess that this had once served as somewhere for the librarians to rest and have tea, way back when the library wasn't severely understaffed. Perhaps you could wander about for a bit while you wait for Lady Detlinde to leave, someone suggested. Spending an entire day underground would surely be bad for your health. In any case, I cannot stay here with you. I must lock the archive doors and return to my office. Solange then returned to the library. We had managed to avoid Detlinde, but it was too much to expect me to walk around until she left. If only I had taken out a book. But well, no use crying over spilled milk. I stared off into the distance in a daze, while Hannelore looked around the garden evidently troubled. Weather this nice makes me wish we could have a picnic, she said, but we left our tea and sweets in the underground archive. How shall we pass the time? You better hope that she doesn't suspect that Magdalene is here by herself. 'Cause, I mean, hello, teacup, more than one teacup there. Hildebrand's head attendant Arthur nervously examined our surroundings. Lady Hannelore, while a picnic does indeed sound nice, we must consider the worst-case scenario and move somewhere more hidden. If we stay where we are now, we might be visible through the reading room's windows. I agree, Lenore added. I do not believe that anyone would use the reading room's carols during the Archduke conference, but the fact remains that we are completely exposed. Shall we head over there? Nobody should see us in the forest. She was pointing to the southern end of the garden and a dense gathering of trees. Sunlight filtered through their branches, painting the forest floor with a complex pattern of shadows. It certainly looked more comfortable than staying out in the open. Lenore's correct, Ottilie said. Lady Rosemond, it would be best for you to travel there in your one-person high beast. You risk falling ill under the intensity of the sunlight. I think you are underestimating how much healthier I am now, I murmured, my lips pursed. The second Jarif had done wonders for me. It was possible that Ottilie just wasn't aware of my improvement. She hadn't accompanied me to the Royal Academy, and I spent most of my time in Ehrenfest at the temple. Lady Rosemond, I am aware that your health is gradually improving, but we have nothing to gain from taking unnecessary risks. If you fall ill, then you will need to wait quite some time before you can next visit the archive. That's true, but don't say it in front of Prince Hildebrand and Lady Hannelore. I glanced in their direction, holding back a shriek. As expected, they were still traumatized from seeing me collapse. They and their retainers urged me toward the trees, the blood gone from their faces. Rosemond, let us go, Hildebrand said. You may use your high beast. If you take ill while helping us, then the royal family will be quite a loss. Hannelore nodded. Prince Hildebrand is correct. As I recall, Dunkelfelder's dormitory is directly south of here. We might be able to see it after moving through the forest for a bit. I couldn't protest any further when even Hildebrand was pushing me to use my high beast. I produced a small one-person panda bus, then headed to the forest with the others. It was pretty vexing that I was the only one not on my feet. This isn't fair. I could definitely keep up with Prince Hildebrand. Because he walks slow, like you. Cornelius sent off an ordnance, and we reunited with Daniel and Angelica just as we reached the forest. I wasn't all too pleased that everyone's overprotectiveness had pressured me into using my high beast, but our stroll through among the trees gave me some much-needed respite. The air here must have been filled with negative ions. It really is strange seeing the Royal Academy not covered in snow, I said, but this is quite a pleasant forest. Indeed, Hannelore agreed. This was my first time noticing its beauty. The greenery and colorful flowers provided such a wonderful contrast to the ivory buildings. Like me, she had only ever seen the Royal Academy during the winter, and she was equally impressed by its springtime beauty. Once we had all praised our surroundings, Hannelore began to tell me her thoughts about the story of Fernestine so far. She hadn't wanted to discuss it while we were with Magdalena. I am so very curious about what happens next, she said, trembling with anticipation. I cannot bear it. If poor Fernestine does not get a happy ending after all she has been through, then I do not know what I will do. What the heck? What are you talking about, Dunkelfelder? What? Oh my god. The second volume ended on such a cruel note. Fernestine received the prince's proposal only for the king to oppose it. Her stepmother's schemes then saw her engaged to another man, which sent her plummeting into a bottomless pit of despair. Hannelore, there is no need to grieve, Hildebrand said rather firmly. The prince will come to save Fernestine. Their love for one another is so pure there is no world in which he will give up on her. He was clearly up to date with the series as well. Is that true, Lady Rosemond? Hannelore said. They were both watching me with such hopeful eyes that I couldn't help but smile. I see no reason to spoil the story when you could just read it for yourselves. I brought the third volume with me for the Royal Academy. Oh my, Hannelore exclaimed. Did you? I cannot wait. And, she tensed up a bit. This really is the final volume, I trust. I nodded, and only then did she finally smile in relief. What's that? Angelica wondered aloud. She had climbed a tree to get a better look at our surroundings. I see a white building. We couldn't even glimpse it ourselves, but she mentioned that it wasn't particularly large. Could it be Dunkelfelder's dormitory, I asked. I don't think so. The dormitory is larger and further away. This building is so small and overgrown that you wouldn't see it from above. Nobody else seemed to know what Angelica had spotted. The Royal Academy's dormitories always reached above the treetops. Each one had a basement for the workers and storage, a first floor for the dining hall and common room, and a second floor for the boys' room, a third floor for the girls' room, and a fourth floor that functioned more as an attic for extra storage. By no means could they be described as small. Angelica, I said, please investigate if you would. There might be an open area around the buildings where we can rest. At once she used physical enhancement magic on herself and nimbly leaped from one branch to another, making her way over to the building. Hannelore gave similar instructions to one of her guards, who darted off as well. The door was locked and did not open, Angelica reported. It was very filthy and presumably hadn't been used for at least a decade. Hanneleore's guard nodded in agreement. Its existence came as a surprise to us all, so it seems an ideal place for us to rest while staying out of sight. So, at the advice of our reconnaissance squad, we headed to the curious building among the trees. Its disheveled appearance and the overgrown grass around it were enough to prove that nobody had come here in a very long time. Ivory buildings do not degrade like this when someone is supplying them with mana. It really must be abandoned. And it certainly is small, Hildebrand added. It's a forester's shed, perhaps? Arthur shook his head. Those are much smaller. The building was small compared to dormitories and castles, but it was still much larger than a forest shed or a gazebo. It also didn't have any windows, which meant we couldn't see inside. The building was strange, but the statues on either side of the door reminded me of the entrance to the temple from the lower city side. Could this be a shrine, I ventured? I remember hearing that my grandfather once destroyed one at the outskirts of the Royal Academy during a game of treasure-stealing dinner. Professor Solange also mentioned that a troublesome student once played pranks at the Academy's shrines to the gods, before his sudden disappearance, that is. I climbed out of Leslie and approached the building. It wouldn't do to leave a shrine dedicated to the gods in such a terrible state. Lady Rosemine, for now I will clean it. We cannot sit here and rest while it remains so filthy. It would only make sense that I should take care of this. Hildebrand and Handler had come all the way here on foot, and no doubt needed to rest, whereas I had traveled in the comfort of my panda bus. I reached into the leather pouch on my hip and took out a sheet of fade paper with the magic circle on it. What is that? A product of Clarissa's research, I said. This magic circle makes it much easier to cast spells over a larger area. I created my step and poured mana into the circle. The paper rose into the air and started to shine, at which point I chanted, Washin'. In an instant, the entire building was engulfed in a massive ball of water. Then the liquid vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving it behind a squeaky clean ivory shrine. And there we have it, I announced. This is the first time I've ever seen a wash and clean an entire building at once, Handler stammered. After seeing Ferdinand clean the entire lower city after the Entwickeln, I had assumed that it was common practice to use large-scale wash-ins. Apparently not. Everyone was looking at me as though I had just witnessed a miracle. Of course, I would not have been able to manage with such a feat without the magic circle. It is all thanks to Clarissa. Praise be her name. Praise to be her name. I was trying to laugh it off when something occurred to me. Maybe Ferdinand was to blame for my lack of noble common sense? Possibly a little bit. Because of his expectations being so high and how crazy he is when it comes to being socially awkward. I think you guys are two peas in a pod there. In any case, let us rest, I said, inviting the others to sit down on the steps by the door. Prince Hildebrand, Lady Handler, would you care to join me? You must be tired. Hildebrand raced over with a smile. I shall accept your invitation, but our journey here did not tire me in the slightest. Mother has been training me in the Dunkelfelder standard, so I'm no less fit than any other child my age. Sure, Hildebrand was a member of the royal family, but he still had Dunkelfelder blood running through his veins. Handler didn't seem tired either. In fact, she was already considering whether to send an attendant to her dormitory to prepare tea for us. Traveling in my high beast was the right move after all. I wouldn't have been able to keep up with these two for long. Our dormitory is relatively close, Handler remarked. Would anyone care for some tea? Hildebrand's retainers all shook their heads. Be at ease, one of them said. We do not wish to make ourselves known, and your attendants would struggle to prepare tea by high beast. In that case, I will rest as well. Come sit with us, I said. We can discuss the story of our nesting while waiting for Lady Magdalena to contact us. As I moved my hand to indicate her seat, it brushed against the locked door behind me. This next thing I knew, I was being sucked into the shrine! What? What the fuck? Is that a magic? What the fuck? It just goes right inside. Whoa. My chair can lean back. Like one of those wheeled ones where you lean back and the chair itself doesn't lean back, but the seat does. I just did that when I did the whoop. I moved my arm back and it kind of made me fall back. And I was like, oh boy. In the blink of an eye, my surroundings changed from the forest to the inside of an unfamiliar room. It was about 20 square meters in size and contained statues of 13 gods, the centermost of which depicted a heroic-looking man wielding a spear and a translucent blue slate. This had to be a shrine dedicated to Leidenschaft, the god of fire. I'd expected the inside of the building to be extremely dark on account of there not being any windows, but the blue slate provided more than enough light. This is my first time seeing a shrine like this, I murmured to myself. The shrines of the temple and the Royal Academy had statues for the supreme gods and the Eternal Five, but this is the first one I'd seen that was entirely dedicated to fire. I realized now that the other 12 statues were of Leidenschaft's subordinates. Wowee! I'm going to hit a massive growth spurt after this, I said, then raised my hands in prayer. Wait, what? Why would you think you're going to hit a massive growth spurt after this? And why are you even praying in the first place? I'm confused! Then raised my hands in prayer. O Leidenschaft, the god of fire, O Warklern, the god of guidance, O Onwalks, the god of growth. Please let me grow to be a normal size. As I finished praying, my mana sparkled and got sucked into the blue slate that Leidenschaft was holding. The slate flashed and some text appeared on it. Let's check this out. Your prayers have reached me and your worth has been acknowledged. I, Leidenschaft, shall grant you a word necessary to obtain the Book of Mestanor. Wait. Is that a Zent thing? Uh-oh. The rest of the text, the mystical word included, was hidden behind the statue's fingers. Oh, mighty Leidenschaft, I cannot read your message from here, I grumbled, and pulled the slate from his hands. This word alone, however, will not suffice. A Zent candidate must obtain the words of the other gods as well. Oh! It's a puzzle! As soon as I read the last part of the message, the blue slate was absorbed in my chest and fused with the staff inside of me. Uh-oh. Girl, you just became a Zent candidate without even realizing it. Oh, shit. She had no idea. Ferdinand's gonna smack you upside the head with that Harrison thing. Oh, my God. Because you just did something that you were not supposed to do. He asked you if you wanted to be a Zent candidate. You said no. You just did the opposite of that. Oh, God. As soon as I read the last part of the message, the blue slate was absorbed in my chest and fused with the staff inside of me. I could sense that it was a combination of a divine will and all the mana I had offered through prayer thus far. At the same time, Leighton Shaft's word arose in my mind, much like when I had learned the names of the god of darkness and the goddess of light. Kraeftark? That sounds wonderful, thank you, Handler said with a smile as she sat down. I gazed around confused. No sooner had the word passed my lips than I found myself outside the shrine again with my hand still touching the door. Leighton Shaft had evidently summoned me, and not a moment had passed in my absence. Lady Rosemont, is something wrong? Handler asked. Oh no, nothing at all, I replied, returning her smile. Everyone was acting the same way as before, which meant that nobody had even noticed my disappearance. Leighton Shaft's word was still engraved in my mind, though. He said it was necessary to obtain the Book of Mestanora, right? I really want to read it! That might be the Grudgeshite girl! Oh boy. The semester's gonna have some words for you, the princess are gonna have some words for you, Ferdinand's gonna have some words for you if he finds out about this. Oh god. The thought of a new book was alluring enough, but this one belonged to the goddess of wisdom herself. I could sense that Hildebrand and Handler were discussing something, but I was too distracted to pay them any mind. I wonder what a book owned by a goddess is like. I can't wait to find out. Wait, hold on. Isn't the Book of Mestanora another name for the Grudgeshite? That means I'm forbidden from reading it, right? Yep. And you just became a Zent candidate, girl. As my dreams crumbled into tiny little pieces, I started to reflect on my actions with a much clearer head. Should I have attempted to contact my ninth for reading the slate? Should I have approached it in the first place? Oh dear. This reminds me of that strange experience we had at the goddess's bath on the night of Flew train. Back then, magical interference had made us forget to contact our allies, and a barrier had prevented the men from reaching us. Had something similar happened while I was in the shrine? It's a possibility, except that nobody noticed you were even gone. Okay, let's calm down and think about this rationally. If the Book of Mestanora really was the Grudgeshite, then it would be seriously dangerous for me to acquire it. I definitely didn't want to become the next Zent. The best way to avoid getting wrapped up in a huge disaster would be to remain completely silent. Oh, who was I kidding? I was about to miss an opportunity to read a book belonging to a goddess. I wanted to get my hands on it so bad. So bad. Oh, God. Wait. Question. If she was to bring the royal family to that shrine, and Prince Sidgeshwal went inside, would that slate still be there? If not, then you're screwed. Not to mention the royal family is searching for the Grudgeshite, right? And they'd appreciate any hints as to its whereabouts. They were so desperate to learn the requirements to become a true Zent that they were translating documents in an archive they hadn't even known about until recently. My experience in the shrine will be tremendously valuable to them, but would they even be able to repeat it? That's what I'm saying. My theory was that whenever a ritual performed at the Royal Academy created a pillar of light, that at least a portion of it went to these shrines and contributed to the translucent tablets within. In other words, to receive the words of the gods, one would need to perform countless blessings and dedicate plenty of mana. Would the royal family be able to manage that when they were barely able to keep the country from falling apart? Yeah, I have to agree on that one. In fact, what would happen if the royal family couldn't manage it? As someone who was used to delegating tasks that were beyond me to other people, my first instinct would be to dump the work on somebody else. Their only desire is for someone to obtain the Grudgeshite, so it seemed like the perfect solution. The only issue was that if the royal family did decide to entrust this duty to someone else, it would definitely be me, because yeah, you've already obtained one of the words. So, what would the royal family do if they tasked me with getting the Grudgeshite and then I actually did? They would want you in the royal family. You would become a Zent candidate. Or you would become the Zent, essentially. So yeah, you would become queen. Not a good thing. Because you would have to leave Aaronfest for that. In an ideal world, I would just read it myself, then hand it over. But what if things weren't so simple? The king had ordered Ferdinand to move to Ahrensbach for being a threat to Jürgenschmidt. If people started viewing me as similarly dangerous, then it was likely that I would receive some kind of royal decree as well. In the worst case scenario, they might even execute me. I don't think they would do that. You're not a threat. You're just trying to find the Gruterscheid. I mean, worst case, you could tell them how to find the Gruterscheid themselves, and they could try to do that themselves. You know? If they entrusted you to find it, that means they're not going to execute you. Because if they did that, they might lose the Gruterscheid because of that. Because, I mean, one of the words just got absorbed into your body. So what if the Gruterscheid ends up being absorbed into you like those did? And you finally found it, I mean. Then they would lose it forever, you know? After all, it was a dispute over the Gruterscheid that had started the Civil War. The situation with Ferdinand had already demonstrated what would happen if anyone but the royal family obtained it, and as I reflected on that, his voice came unbidden to my mind. Do you wish to rule, Rosamine? That had been his question to me when the Bible showed me the path to become the Zent. My feelings hadn't changed since then. I just wanted to read books. I didn't want to be a queen, nor did I want to be the reason for another war. It was in the royal family's best interest for me to share this information, but it was in my best interest to keep it to myself. Yeah, you're damned if you do, doomed if you don't. So, yeah, you're kind of in a lose-lose situation here. Either way, you're screwed. Possibly. Because if you keep it to yourself and they find out that you're keeping it to yourself, then you're going to be seen as a threat. But if you tell them about it, then you might end up getting dragged into this whole thing yourself anyway. Whether you want to or not. I wanted to consult someone about this, but it was much too serious. There wasn't a single person I could tell. I gazed up at the sky as I pondered my opinion options, then saw several beams of blue light shoot from the roof of the shrine. What are those blue lights? I asked, pointing. Hildebrand followed my finger with his eyes and squinted. What blue lights? Handler was squinting too. It seemed that neither one of them could see the lights, even though they were stuck out like a sore thumb. Even their retainers were cocking their heads at me. I blinked a few times and shook my head. Oh, my mistake. Perhaps it was just the sunlight. If the others genuinely couldn't see the lights, then my best option was to drop it. It certainly is bright, Handler said, still squinting up at the sky. The lights were clearly there, but she couldn't see them at all. I wonder where they lead. All of a sudden, an ordnance appeared. It landed on Arthur's arm and said thrice in Magdalena's voice that we could return to the archive. Oh, dear. The location of the shrines. Was going outside a nice change of pace, Magdalena asked. Upon our return, our attendants had immediately prepared some tea for us. I was parched from our time in the sun, and it really hit the spot. Yes, Mother, Hildebrand replied. Professor Solonge helped us escape through a door in the close-stack archive. It led us to a guard, but the sun was too strong for Rosamine, so we ventured into the forest. We found a shrine hidden among the trees and ended up resting there, though the door was locked, so we could not go inside. Magdalena listened with a motherly expression. If you were unable to enter, then how did you know it was a shrine, she asked, prompting him to continue. Rosamine said that its entrance resembled the one to Erfest Temple. Ceremonies once held a surprising amount of significance here at the Royal Academy. The shrine you found was surely important as well. I resisted to urge to nod like crazy and instead offered a more innocuous response. It has since been repaired, but my grandfather once broke a shrine during a game of treasure-stealing dinner. He said that it was found near the edge of the Royal Academy's grounds, though, so it might not have been the one we came across today. I doubt that we reached the outskirts after coming out of the library and taking a brief stroll through the nearby forest. The central, scholar, and attendance buildings, as well as the library, were all at the center of the Royal Academy. The edge was surely closer to where the dormitories were located. I was implying that there were other shrines out there, but would the others notice? Handler seemed to pick up what I was putting down. It would seem that there are other shrines or places of worship around the Royal Academy's grounds. Does the royal family have a map of the Academy, perhaps? Or keys to the shrines? In the past, the dormitories each maintained their own maps for dinner, Magdalena said, but the royal family has never had a map that marks the locations of any shrines, not to my knowledge at least. I shall ask Solange and the librarians of the Royal Library. That reminds me, Ferdinand's dinner instruction manuals included a simple map of the Royal Academy. Perhaps it would be a good idea to look around the dorm when we returned. Lady Magdalena, what did you discuss with Lady Detlinde? I asked. Allow me to say this. She's both very extraordinary and very bold to call herself a Zent candidate, she said. She smiled. Now, let us resume our work. We do not have much more time. I got the message. Whatever they had discussed, Magdalena didn't want to repeat it here. Well, Detlinde did manage to stun even the first wife of Dunkelfelger. I'd like to think she didn't repeat what she said in this close-like archive to Magdalena's face. But you never know with her. Detlinde had said some pretty rude things, even during Royal Academy tea parties, but that had been to lower-ranking duchies, and had only been bad enough to inspire a few wrinkled brows. Plus, now that Ob Ahrensbach was gone, she was due to become the highest authority in Ahrensbach. It was hard to imagine her being discourteous to the royal family and putting her entire duchy at risk. One's retainers would normally stop at nothing to prevent such a thing from happening. However, Magdalena's refusal to discuss the matter made me extremely concerned. It really did seem like Detlinde had proclaimed herself the next Zent in front of an existing royal. Her blatant treachery put her future husband, Ferdinand, in danger of being deemed guilty by association. At the very least, I was glad that their Starbind ceremony had been delayed. Ferdinand couldn't attend the Archduke conference while he was still merely her fiancé, so he was presumably safe from punishment. Wait, actually, would it be best for me to obtain the Gruchenstein as soon as possible? By doing so, I would secure the perfect bargaining chip. There was no point in coming to the negotiation tables empty-handed. And there wasn't a doubt in my mind that the royal family would spare Ferdinand in return for their beloved Gruchenstein. Anything else I could offer would probably result in him getting punished anyway. Am I worrying about this too much? I placed a hand on my chest. If Detlinde really had been foolish enough to repeat what she had said in the archive to Magdalena, then there was only a matter of time before my fears became reality. Surely I was within my rights to keep quiet and worry about things for a bit. The Book of Bestinor may not even be the Gruchenstein. Maybe it just serves as a stepping stone? Even then, it probably won't be easy to obtain. It's all search and secret for now. I took some paper and writing utensils from Annalie, then went back to the underground archive. Schwartz looked up at me and said, "Milady, not enough prayer." I only had the blue tablet inside of me, so that seemed like a fair evaluation. I need to figure out where those other shrines are. Schwartz, is there a map at the Royal Academy with the locations of the shrines for prayer? I asked. It was worth a shot. Yes, Schwartz replied, then took several slates from the rightmost end of one of the bookshelves. It would have taken me ages to reach them, considering that I always started at the top left. Thanks, Schwartz. I gave the shoemill a pat on the head, then started examining the maps. The crudest and the most detailed ones had markers in completely different places, so I still didn't have any definitive answers. I couldn't even see the dormitories or any of the landmarks on them, so I was even more confused about where to go. I would need to make copies of the maps, then compare them to the dinner maps in the Ehrenfest dormitory. That would probably take a while. Rosemine, time's up. Eep. I was working from one of the slates when it was suddenly snatched away from me. I stared up in shock and saw Sylvester handing it back to Schwartz. Where did you come from? You really do block out the world around you when you read, huh? He said. Do you know how many times I called your name? Not at all. Hurry up and get ready to leave, he said, exasperated. I handed my completed translations to Magdalena, then folded up my copies of the maps and put them in my pouch. I didn't expect you to come get me, I said to Sylvester. Seemed pretty obvious to me. Can't have Florencia entering a magic tool this big while she's pregnant. As it turned out, one could describe the underground archive as a giant magic tool. There were these doors to begin with, and only those who met certain mana criteria were able to enter. It was impossible to say what kind of impact such a magic tool might have on an unborn child, which was why Sylvester didn't want Florencia to come here. Does that mean you're going to retrieve me every day? I asked. That's the plan. Come on. Sylvester offered me his hand, but I merely cocked my head at him. Was I supposed to grab it or something? What's the hullabaloo? Or the holdup? My escort's not good enough for you? Oh, no, I just never expected you to escort someone other than Florencia. If she were here, she would be my first choice. I reached out and grabbed onto Sylvester's arm, then he escorted me out of the archive. It was strange. As we ascended the stairs, I actually felt a bit like a princess. Oh, boy! Who knows what he's gonna say if you were to tell him what happened? He'd have a heart attack. We exited the library and made our way down to the dusky corridors. The sun had already begun to set. Back in my commoner days, I had sometimes walked hand in hand with my family and friends, but I couldn't remember holding onto anybody's arm like this. Even as a noble, I had only ever done this for banquets. Sometimes I'd hold on to grandfather's finger, but that felt more like taking on a dangerous mission than being escorted. Besides, whenever I'm in the castle, I tend to just ride on my high beast. Rosemine, do you have to look so somber? I'm simply not used to being escorted like this. To tell you the truth, I'm something at a loss. You aren't used to it? But you've had plenty of experience with Ferdinand and Wilfred, haven't you? No? Sylvester looked surprised, but I was completely bewildered. Ferdinand would never escort me in a normal situation like this. But we did have a bit of an arrangement. Anytime he was moving too fast, I would grab his sleeve, then he would slow down enough to keep me from falling on my face. He'd go from a light jog to a brisk walk. What? That's it? I desperately tried to remember the other things that Ferdinand had done for me. Whenever we rode his high beast, he would help me climb up and then set me down again. Although that was only because I was too short to do either on my own. And Wilfried? You're engaged, right? The only thing... He escorted me for the feast, but that was about it. Oh, when we have our Archduke candidate classes, he carries my heavier belongings into the classroom for me since my retainers can't follow me inside. It had impressed Hannelore and inspired her to say that I was engaged to someone very kind, so it was probably a good thing. Sylvester gave me a displeased frown. I know you usually ride your high beast in the castle, but come on, the heck is that boy doing when you two are walking together? Well, I can't think of any students who serve as escorts on a daily basis. I did. That's you! You were head over heels for Florencia. Of course you were going to do that. You're an oddball here, Sylvester. You were an oddball. Yeah, because you were looking for an excuse to spend time with Florencia. In any case, your situation really can't be compared. You were desperately trying to get the girl of your dreams to notice you, whereas Wilfred is mechanically carrying out the functions of a political engagement. That seemed obvious, but apparently Sylvester was kind to all women, not just Florencia. The men of the world could stand to learn a lot from him. You are far more considerate of women than Wilfred or Ferdinand, that is for sure, I must say. I am surprised. As am I. How did my little brother end up so inept around women? Sure, he plays the part of a perfect gentleman during feasts and the like, but he won't even accompany someone on a daily basis? The closer you are to Ferdinand, the less effort he puts into how he treats you. I was pretty sure that Sylvester had received the same lackluster treatment. Ferdinand often acted with exceptional attention to detail, and on the rare occasion when he was kind, he was really kind, but actually interacting with him would be pretty rough. The next thing I knew, Sylvester was looking down at me with a conflicted smile. What is? I asked. Nothing serious, just occurred to me that some things only time can reveal. Well, if we're being honest, you might want to start acting a bit younger. You've been way too curmudgeonly as of late. And whose fault do you think that is? My own, without a doubt. Sorry. I was starting to feel nostalgic. Benno had used to scold me just like this when I had suddenly remembered that I needed to have a very important discussion with Sylvester. As much as it pains me to say this, I need to tell you something that might age you another year or two. I don't really want to hear it, but I'm guessing I don't have a choice, Sylvester replied with a grimace. Urging me to continue, we were still moving through the corridors, and our retainers were within earshot, but this matter wasn't clear of the room important. So, the Starlight ceremony caused a magic circle to appear, Yeah, what about it? I didn't notice it at the time, since I was gazing upward in prayer, but this was the same circle that appeared during Lady Detlinde's coming-of-age ceremony, the one for selecting Zent candidates. It seemed the audience had accepted Sigistwald as an Zent. It was a good thing in itself, but the circle was simply one part of the selection process. Merely activating it did not a Zent make. You can see why the Sovereign Temple was so desperate to receive ancient rituals in their quest to obtain a true Zent, I murmured. Of course, they won't get very far without a high bishop who can perform them, and they're sure to want my help after the success of the ceremony. Sylvester patted my right hand, which was still wrapped around his left arm. Relax, your engagement to Wilfred has the king's approval. I'm not about to cancel it. You can actually see she's getting a bit taller. Maybe not, but what if I obtain the Grutershite and end up qualified to become the next Zent? Worst case scenario, I want to be prepared to rescue Ferdinand. Sylvester was going all out to protect me while at the same time insisting that we treat Ferdinand as an outsider from Ahrensbach. I wondered how he would react to finding out that I was a Zent candidate now. But I wasn't going to tell him. Not when I didn't have the slightest desire to rule Jurgenschmidt. Instead, I reported that Detlinde had come to the underground archive and repeated what she had said. I don't know what Schlafstrom's flowers are supposed to represent, I said, but they can only be obtained in Ahrensbach, it would seem. And there appears to be some kind of connection between Lady Georgina and the Sovereign Knight Commander. Interesting. You're going to report the silver cloth we found to the royal family, right? I asked. I believe it would be wise to tell them in an environment without the Knight Commander. Sorry. Sylvester frowned. He had barely ever seen the Sovereign Knight Commander before. He was completely unaware that the man had deemed Ferdinand to be an enemy, or that he was responsible for Ferdinand being sent to Ahrensbach. I didn't intend to tell him either. Ferdinand had said that he wasn't going to tell Sylvester, and my understanding of this Adolphus situation was far from perfect. Once we were back in the dormitory, I went to the communal bookcase, which stored documents for the night's course, and retrieved the map once used during no dinner preparations. The adults were busy preparing for tomorrow, and onward, so I elected to return to my room before going to work. Lady Rosamond, what might you be doing? Lenore asked, peering down at the dinner map with great interest. Her curiosity came as no surprise, considering I was just looking through documents for the night course. I spread out the maps I had copied and started comparing the locations of the shrines. There were maps in the underground archive that seemed to show the locations of other shrines like the ones we saw today. They were rather slipshod, so I'm still unsure which of the markers are correct, but I thought that comparing them to this map might be enlightening. Oh, is this circle where we found today's shrine? It appears to be just south of the library, so I would imagine so. She began pointing at the other circles on the map. This one's near the Scholar Building, this one's a short distance from the Attendant Building. Lady Rosamond, do they not seem to be placed at equidistant intervals with the central building as well as the center? I stared at the 6 large, equally sized circles on the map. Now that she mentioned it, that did appear to be the case. What about these smaller circles here, I asked. Perhaps they indicate something else? I shall report these findings tomorrow in the Underground Archive, I said, then started clearing away the maps. I wanted to visit the rest of the shrines during the Archduke Conference. Once winter returned, they would all be engulfed in snow, and traveling to them would be much too unreasonable. But how? The others won't let me go just because I tell them I want to. It would be strange for an underage student who wasn't even supposed to be at the Archduke Conference in the first place to start wandering the Royal Academy's grounds, and my retainers wouldn't let me go without a good reason. For what it was worth, telling them that I was trying to get the Gutterscheid to save Ferdinand, and also so that I could read it, would probably only make everyone annoyed at me. No, it would probably give everybody a heart attack is probably what it is. The next day, I returned to the Underground Archives. Anastasius and Eglantine were there when I arrived. Again, they were going to spend the morning transcribing documents. I investigated the locations of the shrines, I said, spreading out my maps as I started giving my report. It would appear that they are at equidistant intervals, forming a circle around the central building. Does that not just exude mystery? That certainly seems suspicious, Anastasius said, squinting down at my maps. I will ask the Royal Library to search for more detailed documents. There's no need, Prince Anastasius, Magdalena said. I contacted them yesterday. She had already made good use of everything we had told her, however small. Anastasius thanked her, then stood up. I would like to see these shrines for myself. Describing them to father would prove difficult otherwise. Indeed, Magdalena said, and stood up as well. It seemed that with Hildebrand as a guide, the royals would all be going to check yesterday's shrine. Hannelore and I stayed in the archive and continued translating. The atmosphere was so much more comfortable than we weren't in the presence of the royal family. I did not hesitate to start reading the Fernstein volume that you lent me yesterday, Hannelore said. In fact, I became so immersed in it that Cordula ended up scolding me. I must admit to being a tad sleep-deprived today. Even after being chastised, she had apparently soldiered on, reading all the way up to the part where the prince raced off to save Fernstein. Only then had she calmed down enough to sleep, but she was still eager to read the rest. I cannot wait to reach the end, she said. Oh my god, a freaking Bookworm right there. We continued our translating until Anastasius and the others returned from the shrine. Eglantine looked very sickly and was eyeing me as though there was something on her mind. Is something the matter, Lady Eglantine? Lady Rosemine, I wish to consult you about something. May I have a moment of your time? Anastasius glared at me, but I only had one answer to give. I would be delighted to offer my assistance. Oh boy. How long am I continue? Okay, I'm gonna keep going. One more, guys. Consultation. The archive was too public for whatever Eglantine wished to discuss, so I was invited to have tea at her villa. It must have been urgent because she wanted us to meet tomorrow morning. The only thing on my schedule right now was my translation work, and this was an invitation from Eglantine. Anytime would do. What exactly do you intend to discuss with Rosemine? Anastasius demanded. That is, Eglantine paused. I will inform you after our discussion. That makes it sound as you don't intend to allow me to join. His voice was low and tinged with anger, but not even he could sway his wife. She simply returned a firm glare and replied without hesitation. It is Lady Rosemine whom I wish to speak to. Do sit tomorrow out. I refuse. Things always get out of hand when Rosemine is involved. I must be fully aware of the situation at all times, which is why I cannot leave you two alone. Eglantine and Anastasius' battle continued. Personally, I didn't care whether he attended, but I hoped that he would at least spare me from any dirty looks if this quarrel ended in his defeat. I am more concerned that Lady Eglantine looks so unwell. It seemed to me that Anastasius should take care for his sickly wife rather than argue with her, but he was dead set on joining our tea party. In any case, my involvement would only complicate matters further, so I decided to take my leave and return to translating. Prince Anastasius' profound jealousy always proves troublesome. Just into the archive I go. I quickly disengaged from the lovers' quarrel, but Audley was less accustomed to dealing with royalty and struggled to follow my example. She caught me on my way to the door and whispered to me, Lady Rosemine, what will your schedule be for tomorrow? We did not anticipate that you would attend such a tea party during the Archduke Conference, so preparations will need to be made, and the Ob will need to be informed. From outfits to gifts, there was plenty that needed to be considered when meeting with royalty. My plans were up in the air until the winter was decided, and that meant my attendants couldn't yet do their job. Not to mention, we were completely unprepared for such an event. I had been told to stay hidden during the Archduke Conference, which obviously meant no tea parties. Audley's head was presumably spinning. Who can say, I replied, and looked at Eglantine and Anastasia with a troubled hand on my cheek. We will need to wait until a decision has been made. Magdalena set down her teacup, rose from her seat, and elegantly approached the quarreling couple. Then, with an exaggerated sigh, she said, Prince Anastasius, Lady Eglantine, this is unsightly. Lady Magdalena. She was getting right in their faces, and it made me respect her from the bottom of my heart. I could never have done something so bold, and the same must have been true for Hannelore, who was simply watching from a comfortable distance. Prince Anastasius, Magdalena continued, her exasperation clear. Do you not know why Geduld, the goddess of earth, chose to avoid Abiglade, the god of life, and sought the protection of those around her? Perhaps you should re-enroll at the Royal Academy and repeat your studies of the divine. Anastasius twitched. His dour expression was exactly how I imagined the god of life had looked when he was first rejected by the goddess of earth. He embodies the god of life right now! Oh my god! There are some things that a woman might only wish to discuss with other women, Magdalena explained. Lady Eglantine has the magnanimity to hear your will at most times. She must have an especially good reason to refuse you now. Is it not the duty of a husband to understand such things and act accordingly? If you continue to bind her as so tightly as the god of life did to the goddess of earth, then you will only earn her ire. Then, after threatening Anastasis into silence, she turned her red eyes upon Eglantine. As for you, Lady Eglantine, I would advise that you take more time to think before you speak. You know a perfect reason for excluding Prince Anastasis, do you not? If you do not conclude such debates before speaking with Lady Rosamund, then your husband will end up directing his dissatisfaction at her. Eglantine looked up with a start, then shot Anastasis and meet concerned glances. Magdalena's eyes softened as she continued. Sudden invitations from the royal family troubled not only those who received them, but their retainers and duchy as well. The burden is heavy indeed. Although we can attribute some of this to your apparent poor health, I must say that you were rather inconsiderate. It would seem that I allowed my composure to slip. My apologies for my lack of thought, Eglantine said to Magdalena and me. Lady Rosamund, I must apologize to you twice over. Although I do wish to speak with you at once, our discussion will have to wait. Eglantine had it rough. She couldn't even host a tea party without first needing to placate her husband. I replied that she did not need to worry about me, thanked Magdalena for having resolved the issue, then finally made it for the archive. As I went, I caught a glimpse of Audley's relief at the tea party having been delayed. I continued my translation work until Sylvester arrived to get me. Then the two of us headed back to the dormitory. On the way there, I informed him of Eglantine's plan to invite me to a tea party. The news must have come as a surprise because he immediately recoiled. Why are you getting invited over me? The he asked stung. Can't she just not tell you whatever's on her mind at the library? If we send you to the royal villa, I expect you're going to cause all kinds of trouble. Tell her I want to be there too. Lady Eglantine has yet to tell me what she wishes to discuss, but I imagine it has something to do with religious matters. She asked me about the temple once before. Sylvester stared down at me, unconvinced. So she wants to consult you, huh? You may be their best bet, seeing as the royal family and the sovereign temple are on such bad terms, but I don't feel good about this. Prince Anastasia said that he wanted to join us for the same reason. Lady Eglantine refused, though, and we haven't yet agreed on a date. Doesn't seem like there's much chance on me getting in, then. I assume Lady Eglantine's more trustworthy, at least. He sighed, his expression betraying his suffering. I'll inform you when the details have been settled. Nothing has been decided yet, after all. Right, don't forget. In the end, Anastasius finally conceded as he saw it. Missing the tea party was better than having his wife resent him. An ordinance arrived for me not long after my return to the dormitory and announced that I was to meet Eglantine in 2 days' time. Until then, I would continue my translation work as normal. It seemed that I wouldn't have time to go shrine hunting. That's a shame, but our preliminary investigation is just as important, I thought. There was no point hurrying out to visit the shrines when I didn't even know their exact locations yet. Angelica, damn you, how did you spend the day? I asked after dinner. They couldn't enter the underground archive and were, to my knowledge, keeping watch outside the library. I monitored the library's outer corridor, Angelica replied, immediately confirming my assumption. Daniel nodded. Cornelius and Lenore told us to remain vigilant, as Lady Detlindy could visit again. I paused and thought, could one of you use this map to investigate the locations of the shrines? As I understand it, they can be found at regular intervals around the central building, so it shouldn't be too hard to find them once we have a good general idea of where they are. You may take turns. I showed them the map in question, and they readily agreed. Guarding the same place day in, day out was exhausting in its own right, so they would take turns hunting for the shrines and swap at noon. What do you intend to do once the shrines have been found, Lady Rosamund? Clarissa suddenly asked. She was supposed to be working with the other scholars in preparation for tomorrow, so I was surprised to see her wriggle into our conversation. Still, I offered my response with a smile. I intend to clean them. They house the gods, and it certainly wouldn't do to leave them so filthy. I cleaned the shrine we found the other day, and might I add that your magic circle for enhancing wide area magic was of great assistance. I would appreciate having some for the other shrines as well, but... Consider it done. I am honored that you found my research useful, Lady Rosamund, but might I ask how you used the circle exactly? She had yet to piece together that I had paired it with my wash-in, but Daniel explained on my behalf. I see, Clarissa murmured. My research was used to perform a large-scale spell. To think I was unable to witness it with my own eyes. Oh, what vibrant colors the droplets must have shown as Lady Rosamund brought life back to the shrine. Her eyes were wet with sorrowful tears. Lady Handler was there with us, I said, so I expect that everything we have discussed is already known to Dunkelfelder. However, as this all occurred while we were assisting the royal family, I must ask that you keep it to yourself. That goes for you as well, Hartmut. I could tell that you are eavesdropping. Understood. As we continued our discussion, Ottilie and Lazetta were busy preparing for the royal meeting. They were finding it a struggle since Riarda and Brunhilde had taken care of such dealings in the past. But at least Riarda was still around as Sylvester's attendant. We would need to request her assistance with the clothes, gifts, and so on. Lady Rosamund, to think that every day is like this when you are at the Royal Academy, Ottilie said with a wry smile, having never done business with the royal family before. That explains why Gracia is unusually well trained despite being so new to your retinue. Lady Rosamund, I thank you ever so much for coming. After our greetings, Eglantine... 8. Oh, okay, I guess that's... I guess it skipped ahead? Hold on. Okay, that's kind of odd. Lady Rosemont, I thank you ever so much for coming. After our greetings, Eglantine took a demonstrative sip of tea and then bit into one of the provided sweets. It really felt strange to be alone with her without Anastasius breathing down our necks. I am glad to see that your health has improved, I said. It really did concern me when I saw how pale you had gotten after visiting the shrine. I am sorry to have worried you. I simply used too much mana and needed time to recover. Did you clean the shrine as well, Lady Eglantine? I was unaware how else she might have used so much mana. At once, Eglantine's bright orange eyes widened and she giggled. It was no need. It was still positively sparkling from your own visit. Eglantine and Anastasius shared a villa now that they were married, but it was still only the two of us here. Anastasius had gone to the underground archive to work, while Eglantine had asked everyone else to leave the room. Still, she proffered to me a sound-blocking magic tool. I never expected you to be so firm with Prince Anastasius, I remarked, sipping my tea. She smiled. I should find it easier to involve him after we had just had our discussion. And what is it that you wish to discuss? I will assist you however I can. As you know, I went to check the shrine before I asked to meet with you, Eglantine said, watching me closely. She went on to explain that she had touched the door, felt it suck out some of her mana, and then suddenly appeared inside the shrine. That's basically what happened to me. Well, except for the mana part. Eglantine had said that she felt something get sucked out of her stat, but that hadn't been the case for me. Unless, did it take so little that I just didn't notice? I was covered in face stone charms at all times, so mana was always being sucked out of me. One could say I was largely numb to the sensation. Only when I had lost a significant amount of mana did I actually notice it. Eglantine continued, that shrine was dedicated to the god of fire and his subordinates. As I gazed up at the statue of Leidenschaft, I was struck with the compulsion to pray. So I performed a dedication role. I prayed to grow up. As it turned out, one's reaction to appearing before the gods depends on the individual. The idea of whirling hadn't even occurred to me. Perhaps dedication roles were ingrained in Eglantine's mind as what one did to offer prayers to the gods. My mana was sucked out on its own, entirely as though I were wearing face stones atop the auditorium stage, Eglantine said, but I thought nothing of it and continued to whirl. As I offered more mana, a blue face stone began to form in Leidenschaft's hands. Oh, Leidenschaft already had a blue slate when I entered. I guess I never saw it as a face stone because I noticed the shining text on it from the very beginning. It must have depended on how much mana one offers beforehand. I remember the blue slate feeling like a combination of the mana I'd previously offered and a divine will, so I was probably on the right track. My whirling drained almost all of my mana, so I used one of the rejuvenation potions to keep on my hip. They are not as effective as the ones you distributed, Lady Rosemont, but they are still quite powerful. Eglantine had used a royal rejuvenation potion to recover her mana. Then she informed me she had once again felt compelled to pray. Come again, I asked. You prayed immediately after your mana recovered? Indeed, I felt the need to. In the end, Eglantine had made one offering after another until she used up every single one of her rejuvenation potions. By the time I was finished, she said, the blue face stone had grown to be rather large. Still, the text on it informed me that I needed to pray even more. Just how much mana do you intend to squeeze out of her, almighty Leidenschaft? It had already been there when you got there. So, I'm guessing all the blessings that had happened over the course of your time at the Royal Academy this year that's where all that mana went, essentially. So, no wonder she had a hard time doing it. Exhausted of mana, I was expelled from the shrine. It seemed to me as though I had spent an eternity inside, but I returned to find that no time had passed at all. Nobody else seemed to have entered the shrine either. Eglantine had deduced that Anastasius hadn't been inside because he had apparently touched the door and said, so it really is locked. As for Magdalena, she hadn't reacted in the slightest. So, Lady Rosemont, is that shrine not a place for Zent candidates to offer their prayers? Eglantine asked. The underground archive contains a record about a past Zent, describing how they would continuously circle the Royal Academy and pray. I cannot help but wonder what happens when one has prayed enough and the blue face stone is complete. I am just curious, I replied. There being a Zent candidate in the royal family meant that it was in my best interest to feign ignorance and remain as detached from the matter as I could. Being foolishly honest and admitting that I was already in possession of one blue slate would do more to antagonize the royals than anything that Linde had managed so far. You would say that despite having entered the shrine yourself, Lady Rosemont, pray tell what makes you think that I did? You have prayed more than most, and obtained enough divine protections, I would think. You also showed not a hint of surprise at the tale I just told you. Uh-oh, she was right. Shit! My focus had immediately been turned to comparing our experiences, so it hadn't even occurred to me to feign surprise. I'd merely listened with a poker face. Oh, but I was surprised. So surprised that I found myself unable to speak. And speaking of surprises, I was especially stunned when you whirled atop the auditorium stage wearing face stones, I said, changing the topic of our conversation. Was that the royal family's attempt to make the circle shrine? Eglantine smiled. Quite so. You and Lord Ferdinand said that it was for selecting Zent candidates, correct? After the graduating students repeated the Divine Protections ritual, so too did the royal family. We also attempted to activate the circle. Those of the royal family had adorned themselves with faith stones and whirled while expanding mana. Detlinde had managed to trigger the magic circle, so they were confident that they would succeed as well. In the process, Troarkol, Sigiswald, Anastasius, and Eglantine had caused the circle to light up. Prince Sigiswald, Anastasius, and the Zent all became Omni-Elemental through their newly obtained divine protections, Eglantine informed me. Yet I was the only one drawn into the shrine. It makes no sense. What difference between Anastasius and me? Your staffs, I replied. Oh, she blinked in surprise. Have you not yet heard from Lady Magdalena? A slate I translated at the end of yesterday explained how to use the large and small shrines. The smaller shrines were dedicated to the subordinate gods, and praying at them would create faith stones like the ones Eglantine had described. Obtaining these faith stones would strengthen one's elements. Performing the divine protections ritual after obtaining faith stones from all the subordinates would secure the divine protection of the primary gods as well. So the past Zent had prayed almost non-stop while attending the Royal Academy. You can only obtain a staff once, correct? I asked. That is why the Zent who wrote the slate was desperate to obtain the protection of each primary god before he graduated. Zent candidates must acquire their staffs in the Garden of Beginnings. As you were Omni-Elemental from the start, Lady Eglantine, I expect that was where you obtained yours. This is my first time hearing the name, but yes, it would serve as an apt description of where I obtained my staff. It was a strange place with the right tree, she said, in a bit of a daze. Then her shoulders slumped. But does that not mean Prince Sigiswald cannot become a Zent candidate? He did not have every element when he obtained his staff. Anastasius hadn't been sucked into the shrine after becoming Omni-Elemental through the ritual, so I doubted that Sigiswald would either. It might be possible for Prince Hildebrand, I noted, if we return to the old customs of students obtaining their staffs immediately before their graduation, have him pray at the small shrines to increase his elements, and ensure that he obtains divine protections from all the primary gods during his ritual. Then he should also become a Zent candidate. That's going to be a while, though. Because he's not even at the Royal Academy yet. He's, 8? So he has 2 more years, and then he has 6 years until he graduates. So he has 8 years from now. He had already proven his determination. Compressing mana at his young age was no easy feat. So he would probably manage somehow. It would also benefit Eglantine if she didn't want to stand at the forefront. Then Hildebrand could simply work hard in her stead. It was bound to be possible now that we know how to obtain the protections of the primary gods. The problem would be whether the current Zent can last until Prince Hildebrand comes of age. Yeah, that's a good question there. I thought it was good that the royal family had another potential Zent candidate, but Eglantine's face clouded over. Lady Rosemont, it has already been announced that the Prince Sigiswald will next take the throne. If either Prince Hildebrand or I become a Zent candidate, Jurgen Schmidt will face war once again. The sovereignty was already in the process of establishing Sigiswald as the next king. He had managed to trigger the magic circle, then his Starbind ceremony had received a blessing on a level never seen before. Giving the position to Hildebrand or Eglantine was no longer an option. Doing so would cause far too much chaos. I understand your desire not to bring about any further conflict, I said, but in the absence of a Grudgeshite, not the most pressing issue facing Jurgen Schmidt right now. Should his return not be prioritized so that the border gates can finally be reopened and duchy borders redrawn? Plus, although there might be trouble with if you or Hildebrand obtained the Grudgeshite, either outcome is so much better than it going to someone outside the royal family. That is true, but after marrying Anastasius, Eglantine was now royalty as well, but she was already royal anyway. But she was still reluctant to acquire the Grudgeshite. I couldn't blame her. Losing so many family members to assassination during the previous conflict must have been traumatizing. Maybe it really would be best for me to obtain the Grudgeshite myself, then give it to Prince Sigiswald as the condition that he return Ferdinand to Ehrenfest? Eglantine was mentally cornered. She couldn't discuss this matter with Anastasius since he hadn't been accepted into the shrine. I considered my options, though I did not voice them. It seemed likely that I was closer to containing the Grudgeshite than anyone, simply because of how much I had prayed since enrolling at the World Academy. The blue slate had already been whole by the time I entered the shrine, and it seemed reasonable to assume that I could obtain the others without much of a struggle. However, Ferdinand told me that the Grudgeshite was in the Forbidden Archive, which only royalty could enter. There were still plenty of documents in the Underground Archive that I had yet to read. It was entirely possible that some unknown factor could stop me from becoming the Zent, even after obtaining slates from all the primary gods' shrines. For that reason, it was best not to give them any strange ideas. And not to mention, the royal family obviously wouldn't overlook a Zent candidate who seemed capable of obtaining the Grudgeshite through the shrines. If they were set on Sigiswald taking the throne, then they would probably make me marry him. Worst case scenario, they'd simply kill me and take the Grudgeshite by force. Unless, like I said, it involves getting absorbed into your body, in which case they wouldn't be able to take it from you. It was best to remain silent. I didn't want to leave Ehrenfest where my family was. I put on a noble smile and said, perhaps further research in the Underground Archive will reveal what must be done to get Prince Sigiswald the Grudgeshite. Of course, I didn't believe that in the slightest. It was a little more than nice-sounding nonsense. Eglantine gave me a searching look, then cast her eyes down. I thank you ever so much for lending me your ear, Lady Rosebud. I took my leave and returned to the dormitory, whereupon I received some exciting news from Daniel and Angelica. They had found all the primary god's shrines marked on the map I'd given them. Nice! I want to continue! I can't! I'll see y'all in the next one.